No one wanted the bride with a limp, until the cowboy danced with her in front of everyone. She was born in a small countryside town where everyone knew everyone else's name, habits, and weaknesses. From the time she was a child, people noticed her not for her smile or her kindness, but for the way she walked. When she was 6 years old, an accident changed her life. She fell from a broken wooden staircase near her home. The injury did not take her life, but it left a lasting mark. One of her legs never healed the same way again. Doctors tried, her parents prayed, time passed, but the limp stayed. As she grew older, she learned how to move carefully. Every step took thought. She learned which shoes hurt less, which roads were easier, and how to hide pain behind a calm face. Children can be unkind without understanding why. Some laughed, some stared, some asked questions that cut deeper than they knew. She did not answer back. She learned early that silence was safer. Her family loved her, but even love had limits shaped by fear. Her mother worried constantly about her future. Her father worked long hours and spoke little, but his eyes always softened when he saw her trying to keep up with others. They never said she was a burden, but the world around them did. Neighbors whispered that life would be hard for her. Some said she would always need help. Others said marriage would be difficult. In that town, marriage was not just about love. It was about work, strength, and reputation. Women were expected to manage homes, raise children, and support their husbands without complaint. A woman who walked with difficulty was seen as weak, even if her heart was strong. As she entered her early 20s, her friends began to marry one by one. Wedding invitations arrived like gentle reminders of what she did not have. She attended those weddings with a polite smile. She clapped, hugged, and wished others happiness. Then she went home and cried quietly so no one would hear. At night, she sometimes wondered if life had already decided her place. She did not dream of perfection. She only wished for someone who would see her fully, not just her limp. Her mother tried arranging meetings with families. The conversations always began kindly. They asked about her nature, her skills, her character, but sooner or later their eyes drifted to her leg. Questions changed. Smiles faded. Later, excuses followed. She seems sweet, but we are looking for someone more suitable. It might be too hard for her. Each rejection was gentle in words but heavy in meaning. She never complained. Instead, she worked harder. She learned to cook well, to sew, to manage a home with care. She helped neighbors, listened to their troubles, and showed kindness even when she felt invisible. People praised her goodness, but goodness alone did not seem enough to change her fate. There were moments when hope flickered. A distant relative once spoke of a possible match. For weeks, she allowed herself to imagine a different life. She pictured a home filled with respect, simple joy, and shared understanding. But when the family came to visit, everything ended the same way. They were polite, but their decision was clear before they even left the room. After that, she stopped hoping openly. She told herself that some people are meant for quiet lives. She focused on caring for her parents, helping in the community, and finding peace in small things. Still, on lonely evenings when she heard wedding music echo through the town, her heart felt heavy. The world judged her body before her spirit. She knew this, but she did not let it make her bitter. Instead, it made her thoughtful. She watched people carefully. She learned how quickly respect can change based on appearances. She also learned that true strength often grows in silence. As years passed, people stopped asking about her marriage. The questions faded, replaced by acceptance of what they assumed was permanent. Some treated her with pity. Some avoided the topic completely. She smiled through it all, carrying herself with quiet dignity. She did not know that one ordinary invitation to a wedding she almost refused to attend would become the doorway to a moment that would change how she saw herself forever. At that time, she still believed she was meant to stand on the sidelines of life, watching others dance while she stayed seated. She had no idea that her story was not ending. It was only waiting for the moment when someone would see her not as a woman with a limp, but as a woman worth choosing. The wedding invitation came on a quiet afternoon. It was from a distant cousin, someone she had not spoken to in years but still respected. At first, she placed the card on the table and walked away. Weddings were not easy for her. They were full of joy for others, but they often left her feeling small and unseen. Still, her mother gently encouraged her to go. "It's family," she said softly. "You don't have to stay long." On the day of the wedding, she dressed carefully. She chose a simple outfit, nothing too bright, nothing that would draw attention. She wore shoes she trusted, the kind that supported her leg and helped her walk with less pain. Before leaving, she took a deep breath and reminded herself that she was going as a guest, not as someone expecting anything from anyone. The venue was a large open hall near the edge of town, decorated with lights and flowers. Laughter filled the air. People greeted each other warmly. As she entered, a few familiar faces nodded politely. Some smiled. Others looked past her without noticing. She found a seat near the side, not too close to the center where she felt safest. Music played softly at first. Guests talked about work, family, and old memories. She listened more than she spoke. Watching people had always been easier than being watched. She noticed couples standing close, hands brushing, shared smiles passing between them. A small ache formed in her chest, but she pushed it aside. As the evening went on, the music grew louder. Some guests stood up to dance. She remained seated, her hands folded in her lap. Dancing had always been complicated for her. Even when she wanted to try, she feared the looks, the whispers, the way people's attention would linger on her movements. That was when she noticed someone she had not seen before. He stood near the edge of the crowd, wearing a worn jacket and boots that showed signs of long use. He looked out of place among the neatly dressed guests, but he did not seem uncomfortable. He watched the room quietly, not with judgment but with interest. She did not know he was a cowboy at that moment. She only saw a man who seemed different from the others. While many people were busy talking loudly or showing off, he stood still, observing. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away quickly, unsure why her heart beat faster. Time passed. She focused on the music, on the patterns of light on the walls. Then she felt a presence near her. She looked up and saw him standing there, not too close, not too far. His expression was calm, not curious in a way that made her uncomfortable but thoughtful. He greeted her politely. His voice was steady, gentle. They exchanged simple words. He asked if she was enjoying the wedding. She answered honestly, saying it was nice but busy. There was no pressure in his questions, no hidden meaning, just conversation. They talked about small things, the town, the weather, the long drive some guests had taken. She found herself relaxing, something she rarely did around strangers. He listened carefully when she spoke, as if her words mattered. When there was silence, it felt natural, not awkward. She noticed that he did not glance at her leg, or if he did not let it define how he treated her. This was unusual. Most people noticed it within moments. Some tried to hide their curiosity. Others did not. He did neither. As the music changed again, faster and brighter, more people stood up to dance. The floor filled with movement and laughter. She stayed seated, watching from a distance. She felt comfortable enough now to stay, even if she was not part of the center of attention. He remained nearby, standing beside her chair but not blocking her view. They continued talking between songs. He told her he was visiting from another area, helping a friend with work on a ranch. He spoke simply, without pride or exaggeration. She liked that. At one point she laughed. It surprised her. She had not laughed freely at a wedding in a long time. She covered her mouth, embarrassed, but he smiled as if it was the most natural thing in the world. She felt something shift inside her, not hope exactly, but comfort. The kind that makes you forget to guard every word and movement. She forgot for a moment to be careful. She forgot to be the woman who sat quietly to avoid attention. Then, as the music played on, something unexpected happened. He looked at the dance floor, then back at her. He hesitated, as if considering his words carefully. She noticed the pause and felt her body tense slightly. She had been asked to dance before, out of politeness or pressure, and it never ended well. But this felt different. He did not speak right away. He waited until she looked at him fully. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. He did not make it sound like a challenge or a favor. He simply asked if she would like to dance. Her first reaction was fear. Her heart raced. Her thoughts filled with all the reasons she should say no. The looks, the whispers, the risk of falling, the memory of past embarrassment. She looked down at her hands, unsure how to respond. She began to apologize out of habit. She started to explain. But he gently stopped her, not with words but with patience. He told her it was completely her choice. There was no pressure, no expectation. He would understand if she said no. She looked up again. Around them, the room was alive with sound and movement. People were laughing, spinning, celebrating. No one was watching them yet. This moment felt small and private, even in a crowded hall. She took a deep breath. She did not answer immediately. She was not ready yet, but something inside her, something quiet and brave, stirred. For the first time in a long while, she did not want to hide. She asked if they could wait for the next song. He nodded without question. They stood there together, waiting as the music carried on. She did not know it yet, but this pause, this simple moment of being seen and respected, was already changing her. She did not realize that the choice she was about to make would soon place her at the center of a room that had always kept her at the edges. And she did not know that the way he would stand beside her would make others see her differently too. For now, all she knew was that she felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt included. The music slowed, changing into a softer rhythm that filled the hall like a gentle wave. She felt her chest tighten as the moment she had asked for quietly arrived. Her hands felt cold, and for a second she thought about changing her mind. It would have been easy to stay seated, to smile politely and say she was tired. That was what she had always done. That was what people expected. But he was still standing there, calm and patient, not rushing her, not looking around to see who was watching. He did not act like this moment was a test. It felt more like an invitation to breathe. She nodded slowly. He offered his hand again, this time without words. She placed her hand in his, carefully rising from her chair. As she stood, a few people nearby noticed. Their conversation softened. Some turned their heads. She felt the familiar heat of attention on her skin, and her heart began to race. Her first step was cautious, then another. She felt the uneven ground beneath her feet, the slight pull in her leg. He adjusted without being told, slowing his pace, matching her movement naturally. It did not feel forced. It did not feel like he was helping her. It felt like they were moving together. As they reached the edge of the dance floor, the room seemed to grow quieter. Not silent, but aware. She could feel eyes on them now. Old fears rose inside her. She remembered moments from the past when people had stared, whispered, or looked away too quickly. Her shoulders tensed. He noticed. Without stopping, he shifted slightly closer, not to block her from view but to share the space with her. His presence was steady, reassuring. He met her eyes and smiled, not wide or dramatic, just enough to let her know she was not alone in this moment. They began to move to the music. It was not a fast dance. It did not require spins or sharp turns. They swayed gently, step by step. She focused on the rhythm, on the sound of the music, on the simple act of moving forward and back. At first, her movements were stiff. Her body remembered years of caution. Then something unexpected happened. No one laughed. No one whispered loudly. The room stayed still in a different way. People were watching, yes, but not with mockery. Some looked surprised. Some looked thoughtful. Others looked confused, as if they were seeing something they had never considered before. She felt tears gather in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She did not want to cry. Not here. Not now. She wanted to stay present. As they danced, she became more aware of her body, not as something broken, but as something real. She could feel the floor beneath her feet, the music in her chest, the steady movement of time. Her limp was still there. Her pain did not disappear. But it no longer felt like the most important thing about her. He followed her pace closely. When she slowed, he slowed. When she gained a little confidence and stepped more freely, he matched her without hesitation. There was no pulling, no pushing, just understanding. Around them, the world seemed to shift. A woman near the front lowered her phone, her expression softening. An older man crossed his arms and leaned forward, watching more closely. A few guests exchanged glances, then looked back at the couple on the floor. The energy in the room changed slowly, quietly. She felt her breathing ease. For the first time in a long time, she lifted her chin. She did not hide her leg. She did not try to place herself behind him. She stood where she was, visible and steady. The music continued, and with it her courage grew. She allowed herself to smile, a real one, not the polite kind she wore to survive social gatherings. It reached her eyes, warming her face. He noticed her smile and smiled back, as if this was exactly where they were meant to be. The song felt longer than it probably was, or maybe time just moved differently in moments like this. She did not want it to end, not because of him alone, but because of how she felt inside herself. Strong, calm, seen. When the music finally slowed to its end, the room remained quiet for a heartbeat longer than usual. Then applause began, not loud at first. A few claps here and there. Then more joined in. The sound grew, filling the hall. She froze, unsure how to react. Applause was something she associated with others, not herself. He gave her a small nod, encouraging, as if to say she had done nothing wrong, nothing embarrassing. She stood there, letting the sound wash over her, unsure whether it was for the dance or for the courage it represented. They walked off the floor together, hand in hand, and returned to the place where she had been sitting earlier. As she sat down, she realized her hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from emotion. People began to approach them. Some offered compliments about the dance. Some spoke to him, then to her, with a new tone in their voices, less pity, more respect. She noticed it immediately. The way people stood straighter when they spoke to her. The way they looked at her face instead of her leg. She answered politely, still trying to understand what had just happened. He stayed nearby, but he did not take over the attention. He did not act like a hero. He simply remained present, as if this was not about him being brave, but about her being worthy. When things quieted again, they sat side by side. Neither spoke for a moment. The noise of the wedding continued around them, but she felt strangely peaceful. She finally broke the silence, thanking him quietly. Her voice shook a little. He shook his head gently and told her there was nothing to thank him for. He said he was glad she said yes. Those simple words stayed with her. As the night went on, she realized something important. The dance had not changed her body. It had not erased her past, but it had changed how she saw herself. She was no longer just the woman who stayed seated. She was the woman who stood up and stepped forward, even when it was hard. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know what this moment would lead to, but she knew one thing for certain. She would never see herself the same way again. After the applause faded and people returned to their conversations, the room did not feel the same anymore. She felt it immediately. The air around her seemed lighter, yet heavier with meaning. It was as if something quiet but powerful had settled into the space. She sat in her chair, hands folded again, but this time she did not shrink into herself. Her back was straight. Her eyes were calm. People who had passed her earlier without a glance now slowed down near her seat. Some smiled in a way that felt genuine, not forced. A few stopped to speak, asking simple questions, treating her as if she truly belonged there. She answered politely, still trying to understand the sudden change. Nothing about her body had changed. Her leg was the same. Her walk was the same. Yet the way others looked at her was different. She realized something important in that moment. People often follow what they see others do. When she had been ignored, it was easy for everyone else to ignore her too. But once someone had chosen her openly, without shame, the room had been given permission to see her differently. The cowboy stayed close, not as a shield but as quiet support. He did not interrupt conversations or draw attention to himself. When people spoke to her, he listened. When they spoke to him, he gently shifted the focus back to her. It was subtle, but she noticed. As the evening moved forward, she felt less tired than she usually did at gatherings. Normally, such events drained her. She spent so much energy being careful, protecting herself from looks and thoughts that never came kindly. But now, she felt a steady warmth inside her chest. It was not excitement. It was something deeper, a sense of balance. She excused herself at one point to step outside for fresh air. The night was cool and the lights from the hall spilled softly onto the ground. She stood there, breathing slowly, feeling her heart settle. She had danced. She had been seen, and the world had not ended. No one had laughed. No one had turned away in discomfort. He joined her outside a few moments later. They stood side by side, looking out into the quiet. She thanked him again, this time more clearly. She told him how hard it had been for her to stand up, how many times she had chosen to stay seated instead. Her voice was calm but honest. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he did not offer advice or words of comfort. He simply said that he believed people were more than the first thing others noticed about them. His words were simple, but they stayed with her. They talked for a long time after that, not about the dance, but about life, about work, about small joys and quiet disappointments. She told him about growing up in the town, about caring for her parents, about learning to accept things she could not change. He spoke about long days of work, about moving from place to place, about valuing honesty over appearances. There was no rush in their conversation. No promise made, no future imagined out loud, just two people sharing space and time without fear. Inside the hall, the celebration continued, but for her, something more important had already happened. She felt a shift within herself, like a door opening that she did not know existed. For years, she had believed that her worth depended on how others judged her. That belief had shaped her choices, her silence, her patience. Now, she saw how fragile that belief was. As the night came to an end, people began to leave. Goodbyes were exchanged. She stood slowly, preparing to go home. Several people stopped her to say goodbye, using her name, looking directly at her. It felt new. It felt earned. The cowboy walked with her to where her family waited. Her mother watched them approach, confusion and curiosity mixed in her expression. She had seen her daughter sit quietly through many events. She had never seen her walk back from a dance floor with her head held high. On the drive home, the quiet felt different. Her mother asked gentle questions. She answered honestly, without exaggeration. She did not say the night had changed her life, but she said it had changed how she felt about herself. When she lay in bed that night, sleep did not come easily. Her body ached as it always did after standing and moving more than usual, but her mind was awake in a peaceful way. She replayed the moment she stood up, the way the room had gone quiet, the way she had kept moving. She realized that for the first time, she was not ashamed of her limp. It was part of her story, but it was not the whole story. She had strength that had grown quietly over years of being overlooked. And now, that strength had finally stepped into the light. The days that followed were not suddenly perfect. The town did not transform overnight. People did not become kinder by magic, but something had shifted in her. When she walked through the market or greeted neighbors, she felt steadier. She looked people in the eye more often. She spoke with more confidence. Some noticed, some did not, but it mattered less than before. She thought about the dance often, not because of the attention it brought, but because of the choice she made in that moment. She had chosen to stand, to move, to be visible. That choice belonged to her alone. She did not know if she would see him again. He had said he would be leaving town soon. They had exchanged no promises, only respect. Yet his presence remained with her, not as a person she depended on, but as a reminder of what was possible. She understood now that dignity does not come from being chosen by others. It comes from choosing yourself, even when it is uncomfortable, even when the outcome is uncertain. And for the first time in many years, she felt ready for whatever came next. Life did not change suddenly after that night, but it moved differently, like a river that had quietly changed its direction. The morning after the wedding, she woke up with the same responsibilities, the same body, the same limp. Yet something inside her felt lighter. She noticed it while making tea, while walking across the room, while speaking to her parents. She was still careful with her steps, but her thoughts were no longer heavy. People in the town began to talk, but not in the way she was used to. It was not pity or quiet judgment. It was surprise. Some spoke about the dance. Some spoke about her smile. A few said they had never really noticed how kind she was before. She listened without reacting too much. She had learned not to let opinions control her emotions. Still, she could not deny that the tone had changed. Days passed. She returned to her routine. She helped her parents, visited neighbors, and did small tasks that filled her time. But now, when she walked outside, she did not rush to avoid people. She did not lower her gaze. She moved at her own pace, steady and calm. One afternoon, she received a message. It was from him, short and simple. He said he hoped she was well and that he was thinking about their conversation outside the hall. She read it more than once. Her heart did not race like it once might have. Instead, she smiled softly. They began to talk occasionally, not every day, not with urgency, just honest messages about life, work, and quiet moments. He was traveling again, helping on different ranches, living a life that moved from place to place. She shared stories of her town, of small changes she noticed in herself, of learning to speak up when something mattered. There was no pressure between them. No promises made too soon, and that was what made it feel safe. As weeks turned into months, she noticed another change. People no longer spoke about her marriage with sad voices. Some even mentioned possible matches again, but this time without hesitation. She thanked them politely but did not feel the old anxiety. For the first time, she understood that marriage was not a measure of her value. It could be part of her life one day, or it could not. Either way, she was whole. Her mother noticed the change too. One evening, she said quietly that her daughter seemed stronger, not in body but in spirit. She hugged her mother gently, feeling gratitude instead of pain. She met him again some time later when he returned to town. This time, there was no wedding, no crowd, no music. They met simply like two people who respected each other. They walked slowly, talking, laughing at small things. He did not walk ahead of her. He did not slow her down either. They moved together. People saw them, but she did not think about their eyes. She was focused on the present moment, on the sound of her own voice, on the feeling of being accepted without explanation. Their relationship grew naturally, not fast, not dramatic, built on trust, understanding, and patience. He never tried to change her. She never tried to impress him. They spoke openly about fears, limits, and hopes. When disagreements came, they faced them honestly. She realized that love, when it is real, does not ask you to hide. It does not ask you to become someone else. It meets you where you are. One evening, as they sat quietly watching the sunset, she thought about her past, about the girl who had learned to be silent, the woman who believed she had to accept less. She felt compassion for her old self, not sadness. That version of her had survived. And because she survived, she could now live fully. She still walked with a limp. That never disappeared, but it no longer felt like a weight she carried alone. It was simply part of her rhythm, her pace, her truth. People would remember the dance for a long time. Some would tell the story again and again, But for her, the most important part was not the dance itself. It was the moment she stood up. That choice changed everything. She learned that dignity is quiet, that courage can be gentle, and that sometimes the world only changes after you decide to see yourself differently first. Her life was not perfect, but it was hers, and for the first time, that was more than enough.